Welcome to Life Mastery Radio with Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey, the show that dives into the science of higher consciousness with inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. Join Todd, Jackie, and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. It's all right here with stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Now, here's your hosts, Todd and Jackie.
And hey, it's another groovy day, and most of you already know why it's that way, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because I make it that way. When I get up in the morning, I decide it's going to be a groovy day, and guess what? The rest of my day is pretty groovy. Something might happen, something might change, and I can always just think back. I started out groovy. I can turn this around, and it doesn't usually happen. It always happens. I'm not going to lie to you. Welcome to Life Mastery Radio, the talk show that brings you great thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. It's another groovy day because I get to hang out with my good friend, Jackie Bailey. Hi, Jackie.
Hello. How you feeling?
How are things at the Speak Feed? Oh, you asked me how I'm feeling because you know.
Feeling.
I caught a cold this week. I was supposed to go into the hospital for some procedures, and I woke up in the morning and I thought, you know what? There's no way they're going to let me in the doors of the hospital. So I had to delay things a week, and I'm recovering. Still a little groggy, still a little kind of out of it, but everything happens for a reason. And you know what, Jackie? I'm feeling pretty groovy.
Good. I was just going to say, or I was going to ask actually, is the delay, are you feeling good about the delay, or are you feeling irritated by the delay? What are you feeling by that?
Well, it just delays the whole process. And many of you know I've been diagnosed with throat cancer, and they were supposed to I was supposed to get augmented, right? I was supposed to get a port and a feeding tube and some of these other things, and there was just no way they were gonna let me in the hospital as sick as I was.
Yeah.
So that put it out another week. So that all got delayed a week. But instead of 2 different days getting augmented, now they've got me on 1 day getting augmented. So I get augmented all in 1 day, all in one shot. And the next day I start treatment. So I don't know. I can't answer your question. I guess I'm just going with the flow and feeling groovy. Da, 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 da.
Well, it's all going to be good. It's all going to work out. It's all going to be fine. Delay or not. There's always a reason for it. I learned that from you. I learned that from our amazing guests.
I'm looking for the gift. How are things at the Speak Feed Lead Project? You got lots of things cooking.
Yeah.
Speaking clubs and courses, and oh my gosh.
Yeah, today is the 4th episode. We will be filming the 4th episode of our TV pilot, being present with your stage presence. And you know what's exciting is I've had some guests on my show that have been on our show here. Do you remember Richard? Joseph McGuire. Joseph McGuire, right. He was still reading expert. He was on my show to talk about eye contact because I'm teaching the 5 rules of effective conversation. So he was on my show. We were talking about eye contact and what do the eyes tell us when we're conversing with someone. Very interesting. That was last week.
That was some good stuff. I remember that. And that show's on our YouTube channel, so you can go and check it out.
It is. And then today, my guest is going to be Dr. Philip Agrios. Do you remember him? He talked about life's one rule, and I think we took a quiz as to what of the 3 principles that every human has, which one is our dominant and our saboteur and that kind of thing. So he's going to be on the show today as we talk about types of questions you can ask that are going to evoke interesting conversations and learning things about people. And next week, Jackie Simmons. I don't know if you remember Jackie. She started the Society to Prevent Teen Suicide. And so she's going to be on the show. We're going to talk about listening. What does it mean to listen when you're in a conversation, especially listening for particular things that are going to help you understand somebody better. So it's
You're,
really exciting.
you're rehashing some of our cool guests. There must be over 300 shows on our YouTube channel, and we've had some really amazing people that are, on the cutting edge of their own becoming, and they're not trying, but they're showing people how to better their lives and to master their lives. And it's really, really cool stuff. We bring some really cool content to people.
We do. And it's just conversations. That's what I preach to even the youngest kids I teach is conversations. You got to be curious. Curiosity is going to lead to conversations. Conversations are going to lead to learning more about people, understanding people, which is going to lead to empathy. And when we have more empathy, the world's a better place, and we're kinder to each other. And we're in a better place, generally speaking. So
and tools to take along doesn't mean you have to use them. I mean, or at some point in your life, you might remember, hey, there's this really cool tool that I could use right now. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So we're having fun.
I want to remind our listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.com. You can go there, and any links that we talk about with our guest today will be right there. We have a link to today's guest. And today I'm going to tell you, we're talking about a life key, a life mastery key. So stand by. We're coming up here pretty soon. But while you're on our website, you can sign up for Jackie's newsletter. She sends a newsletter out once a week. It highlights who's been on the show, who's coming on the show, and of course, a blog post. She writes a blog post about every show, about the most recent show. So that's all we use that email address for, is that newsletter, and you can stay up to date with all things life mastery. Are you ready to talk about meditation, Jackie?
Yes, I am ready.
You've been exploring. We did get our guest book, but what had been your experience before?
Well, I didn't grow up meditating. I grew up praying. And so in the last, say, 3 years or so, I've realized that meditation is what I used to call pondering. I was taught to pray and then ponder about things. And meditation to me is just a way to ponder either before or after I've prayed, or after I've learned something, and help me to incorporate that, or to just look for more treasures in that knowledge. And I have a regular practice now of meditating every day. It's interesting that I've started to realize that when I began meditating on a regular basis, it was to help me to change my mindset. Now I'm realizing I'm actually really good at the mindset thing, but I'm not as good at the feel set. That I actually need to concentrate more on the feelings that I want to incorporate rather than just the the relationship there. So I think Richard's going to probably be able to give me some pointers on that today as well.
Yeah, we've got an expert.
I read the first chapter of his book, and I started to work on one of the exercises he suggests. So yeah, all's good. I'm excited about today.
And she stopped because after each chapter, this is a 14, we're going to talk a little bit more about it, but it's a 14-week program. And after each chapter, he says right there, stop and do this for 7 days. Do not read any further. So it's kind of cool. And it is a nice short little book. Okay, let's introduce our guest. Our guest today is Richard Dixey, and he is a Ph.D. He is a senior faculty member at Dharma College in Berkeley, California, a research scientist and a lifelong student of Buddhism who holds advanced degrees in biophysics and the history and philosophy of science. Richard directed a bioelectronic research unit at London Hospital before becoming a CEO of his own biotech company. He moved to the United States in 2007 to devote himself to teaching meditation, deepening his own practice. That's the best way, right, Jackie, is you teach it.
Yep.
And running the Light of Buddha Dharma Foundation in India with his wife. Hopefully I say this right. Wangmo, the eldest daughter of the well-known Tibetan Lama Dartang Tuku. Tuku, I think. Dr. Richard, well, I won't call you doctor because I don't see that pop up anywhere. Richard, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. And so I'm wondering if you've always been a meditator. I mean, now you have this book. Is this a recent thing that you started in your life, or how long have you been meditating?
Well, it's interesting to hear you talk about Christianity and praying. Within the great meditation traditions of Asia, there is this trilogy they talk about. They say you should study, you should meditate, and then you should contemplate. So it's actually in three things: study, meditate, contemplate. And I remember back when I was a teenager, I became very interested in the fact that I could see someone walking along the street and I knew they were looking at the world their way. And I'm walking along the street and I'm looking at the world my way. How does that work exactly? Like, how do we
Who's
do
right
that?
and who's wrong, right?
Yeah, they're wrong and I'm right. Yeah, of course, it's next thing. But just how does that work? And that was what started me down a road of personal exploration, really a long time ago. I was a student at university, to try and understand this. And of course, being scientifically trained, the way that the scientists explain it is to say, well, there's only one world and we are just epiphenomenal. We're just got this display going on that doesn't really mean anything, because really all we are is objects in that world. And I never really bought it. I always felt that was kind of inadequate. There's something wrong with that explanation. And in many ways, my whole life from that day on was trying to work out how to make sense of the fact that we all have this rich inner experience. And yet at the same time, we're being told it's meaningless and all that really is going on are the laws of physics. Like, what is that about? And really quite late in my life, really, I managed to square the circle. It took me a long time to get to grips with it and understand what it was. And because of that, I've become quite passionate about fundamentally understanding our experience. And this is really, really fundamental. I mean, this is primary school stuff. And it's really incredibly simple. And it's this: the only actual experience we ever could have, or anybody else could ever have or could have, are either the inputs from the five senses or our thoughts and imaginations. Everything else is an inference. Now, this word inference really needs to be understood. An inference is where you go, there's smoke, so there must be fire. It's an assertion based upon one piece of evidence that makes you think there must be another one. Now, in exactly the same way, we all know we've got two eyes and they make a model, perspectival model of the world. But we don't actually receive a three-dimensional model of the world at all. We get two slightly overlapping flat images from which we make that model. In exactly the same way, we have two ears. Phase differences in sounds enable us to work out where sounds are coming from. We're making a model. Our body, which we think we absolutely have in the way we think, is actually an image. In fact, it's made from stress receptors. And the reason why your teenage children, for example, are so clumsy is not because they're lazy. It's because the model they have of their body is slightly out of date because they're growing. So as a result, they overreach the whole time, knock things over because their arm is longer than they think it is. That's why they're clumsy. We're living in a map, a construct, which is an inference, a best guess of the world around us. Now, you would have thought we'd learn this in school. Like someone would say, hey, you're really living in a map, you may think it's real, but actually it's a map. They never mention it. And because it's never mentioned, there is a deep enigma. And the enigma is this: if you really believe that we are merely watching the laws of physics and what's really happening in the laws of physics, how come we are the only thing that knows that? That's to say, our only experience is coming from our five senses, thoughts, and imaginations. That statement about the laws of physics is an inference. based on our experience, which means no matter how much education, how many scientific laws you quote to me, it doesn't alter the fact that fundamentally we are making a world. And this is where meditation starts. That realization, oh my gosh, of course we're making. In fact, I was taught that at school, but no one said it like that. Once you realize you're making a world, then you go, boy, could I get any direct experience of that world making? Would there be some way I could kind of get a bit closer to how I'm making a world? Is that possible? And indeed it is. And that's what meditation is really about. It's about that fundamental thing in life from which everything else comes.
Wow. Okay. That is fascinating. So then what would you say then, with that in mind? Is there a defined purpose for our meditation practice?
Yeah. Okay. So in order to make progress in this, we have to understand something about how we make the world and why we make the world. So let's just do with a why. We're a little puny animal, really very insignificant in the natural world. We came apparently from the savannas of Africa. And in fact, you probably saw just last week, there was an article saying we got down to 12 families at one point. We almost went extinct. We were so vulnerable and so insecure in our place in the world. Why do we now dominate the planet in the way we do? It's because we can learn from experience. That is a unique killer app that we have, whereas saber-toothed tigers and elephants, whatever, they have a limited ability to do the same thing. We really have it in spades. We can learn from experience. Now, how does that actually work? What that means is when something appears in our five senses, thoughts, and imaginations, we have a mechanism that recognizes it and says, oh, I've seen that before. I know what that is. I know what to do now. I can learn from that. Or I went wrong last time. I shouldn't do that. So we have this map, which is telling us what to do and what not to do, what we want, what we don't want, what is good, what is bad, what is dangerous, what is not dangerous. Now, this map making is essentially paranoid. It's really designed to keep us out of trouble, which is why, of course, all news is bad news. We are not interested in good news. There are billions of good news stories every day, but the one child abduction, the one earthquake, the one flood is the thing we read about because we're interested in bad news. And that's not because we're being manipulated by Fox or something. That is the nature of our actual cognitive apparatus. That's what it does. Now, we need to understand it. Now, this word understand is intensely interesting. It's one of those English words that's really interesting. To stand under it. To stand under it. If we could understand by standing under our cognitive apparatus, we might be able to work out how we are making the world, what influences are affecting the way we make the world, and so come into a vaster experience of being a human being. And to do that is the fundamental view, if you like, the fundamental understanding. That's the study bit of the study, practice, contemplate thing. That's the study bit. So what do we then do? Well, we need to look at our attention, because the problem with most people's lives is reflexive reactivity. That's to say they're being pulled this way and that by things they want, things they don't, things are on their mobile phone, the news, oh my God, interactions, everything else. They're being dragged here and there. That lack of control of our attention is the fundamental element of stress in modernity. After all, if you go back 2,000 years, we live longer, we have better houses, we have more entertainment, more money. There's no metric you can name in terms of humanity that hasn't improved dramatically. In fact, the improvement really is in the last 30 years.
Right.
If you watch movies based in the 1970s, everybody lives in these dingy, dirty apartments. The roads are filthy. Everything's dirty. Now look at the world. But happiness is getting less,
Mhm.
not more. So there's something weird here. If being happy was merely a function of having more money and living in with better technology and living longer and having better food, if that's what it all was, then you'd expect happiness to be going up exponentially as all these things improve.
That's
But
fascinating.
it isn't, and it never has. And politicians are going around saying there's this problem, I'll solve that. There's that problem, I'll solve that, as if somehow solving problems is going to make happiness. It doesn't, because we are reactively being pulled this way and that by modernity. Unless we can get to grips with that, we won't find happiness.
There is.
So this is a very deep issue, actually. It comes to be very deep.
My first guess would be because there's a lack of silence, right? There's a lack of being with ourselves, which would be meditation, but there
Yes,
isn't
but
that
again,
connection.
this word silence, problematic.
Yeah.
So if we accept, let's say I've convinced you that we're living in a display, and that display is telling us what to do because it's basically paranoid. So what we have to do is work out how we are reacting to that display and why. Now, that means getting to grips with our attention, because it's our attention that's being captured all the time. And of course, we now walk around with these little mobile computers called mobile phones with devices with actual software on them that's designed to capture our attention.
Right.
And now it's got worse because with the robots like ChatGPT, they're going to be able to personalize that process. It's going to become really intense. And we're talking logarithmic change here. This isn't slow thing. Next year, it's going to be 10 times worse. I mean, it's like that. It's logarithmic. So we need to get to grips with our attention. Now, this is where meditation starts becoming intensely useful, because meditation points out that there are actually two parts to our attention, not one. Now, most people who've been educated in the contemporary world know very well how to concentrate. Johnny, concentrate, concentrate. That's the thing we know how to do. It's called adverting, where the word advertisement comes from. Concentrate. The trouble with concentration is it's brittle. You concentrate on one thing, something else happens, you get dragged away to that thing.
Squirrel.
And that thing. So you find as you try to concentrate, you realize that there is this lack of control, this reactivity in concentration. It's inherently brittle. Now, this is where the meditators really were right on the money. They said, actually, there are two parts to concentration. There's adverting, which is this ability to concentrate, and then there's savoring. Now, savoring is a totally different aspect of concentration. Literally, it's like you lift a cup of coffee to your lips, that's adverting, and then you taste the coffee. You're still concentrated, but now you're tasting the coffee. Now, I began to realize that this was a gateway. I mean, it's there in the text. The ancients knew it very well. But I began in teaching the courses at Dharma College, which is this college I established with my wife when we came over here and had been teaching there for a while. The whole idea of the college was to reinterpret, to revision the wisdom lineages of Asia and express them in modern language. And as I began to teach meditation, I realized, oh my gosh, the way the meditation is normally presented is as if it was being taught to a monk living in robes in the 4th century, for whom sitting for an hour in meditation is kind of normal as their day job, right? That's what they do for a living.
More than an hour.
Yeah, more than that. Whereas for modernity, we don't have time to do that. And I suddenly realized, wow, you could take these teachings and put them into something much, much more compressed. And this is what the 3-minute approach is. So the first thing we do is we examine adverting, concentration, using a candle, which is a very common way of developing concentration practice. Simply watch a candle flame. But then I say, okay, that's adverting. And I'm sure you all experience brittleness, which is when thoughts or sounds or experiences pull you away, which is why people always say, oh, I've got to have no thoughts. If only I had no thoughts, I could concentrate. Wrong. It's because you haven't understood concentration. Now, second exercise, and literally chapter 2, is to say, okay, now take a bell, hit the bell and listen to the fading sound. Now, that fading sound is a changing meditation object that goes into silence. Don't do it once. Every time you do it, you follow the moving sound as it fades. And then in silence, you're going to find thoughts going, do it again. And gradually, over the course of 3 minutes a day for a week, you'll find yourself able to hold a savoring concentration without an object at all. You can literally listen to silence. Now, this opens the door to becoming calm within experience, rather than always trying to find calmness against experience. Because savoring is not brittle. In fact, when a sound happens, when you're in a state of savoring, you merely incorporate that sound like a flavor into the savored experience. And savoring opens up a whole world of what could be called tacit knowledge. This is knowledge that's not reactive. It's exactly the knowledge an antique dealer uses when they pick up an object and they're kind of holding it and looking at it. They're savoring it, or connoisseur. And my hope is that meditation will open the door for people to become connoisseurs of their own experience. Now, that connoisseurship you take everywhere, at all times, until you cease. There is never any time you cannot be a connoisseur of your experience. So the whole idea within the 3-minute thing is to take your meditation off a cushion, away from an altar or a shrine room, into your everyday life, but give you tools so you can be a connoisseur of your experience. Of course, if you then go on to be more creative, or you land up wanting to be more spiritual, or you just want to use it so you can think clearly, all of that's good. It doesn't really matter what you use it for, but what you found is a fundamental life skill. It's actually more fundamental than reading, writing, walking, anything. It is the most fundamental life skill. And it leads to a discovery of meaning in a very surprising place, because we always think meaning is somehow out there. There's something out there we can find. But actually, it's like looking for Cary Grant in the TV screen.
Right.
There's no one in the TV screen. It's a display. You've got to look at the display maker. And when you look at the display maker, oh, okay, now I understand what's happening. That fundamental confusion, literally, I'm 71 years old. It has taken me almost my whole life to get to realize this basic fact.
A life master journey. Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is you're almost incorporating a sense of discernment.
You are, of course. Yes, because, well, okay. So there's this wonderful quote by a German philosopher who's kind of notorious called Wittgenstein. And Wittgenstein, the terrifying philosopher of the 20th century, said, the aim of philosophy is to free our natural intelligence from its bewitchment by language. And there it is. We're being bewitched. And the reason is because the display is made of words. It's named. Everything is named. We've got a name for everything. Now, it's interesting in our language. Now, words are valuable because they denote, they point at things. Now, in our language, we have this extraordinarily interesting pair: cognition, recognition. When you know something, so I recognize that. We would say recognize. Actually, it's recognize that. I recognize you. I know who you are. What have you done when you recognize? You have redone your cognition again, informed by your memory, and now know what you're looking at. Now, that process happens in time. We can actually measure it. It takes about 250 milliseconds, about a quarter of a second to recognize something. And in that quarter of a second, we name it, but also we ascribe to it, I like, I don't like, I want, I don't want, this is good, this is bad, I ought to do this, I ought not to do this. All that judgment comes along in our recognition. If we were just cameras there wouldn't be a problem. But we're not cameras. All of our past, everything we've learned, all of the good things and the bad things, our education, all of that gets applied in recognition to
the
what
movie.
we quote know, which means that the world that we see is entirely individual. And this is where we get confusion. People fight over the same thing, political disagreements, national disagreements. These are all to do with this in this invisible process of recognition within which we are always embedded. And this is happening moment to moment to moment. This is not like once a day. This is 20 times a second that we're recognizing. It's a continual, like a movie screen going click, 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 click. If we don't understand this, life will always be enigmatic. At a fundamental level, we don't understand who we are.
It creates a reaction.
It creates reflexive reactivity. Exactly.
So this movie is playing and we're reacting to it, whether we realize it or not, emotionally on an emotional level or something. And then it comes a physical reaction. Oh, you hurt me in the past, so you're a bad person.
Except it's not a movie. There's one thing I'm going to take issue with there. Often people say, oh, it's a movie. The world's not real, man. You know, like that's what the hippies always said. The world's not real, man. Just drop out. You know, no, it's not a movie.
You're my kind of guy. You talk like I understand. No,
actually, it's a reflexive inference. It's inferentially making a model. It's a model.
Right, based on information.
Model. It's not a movie. It's based on something out there. I'm not arguing. I'm not suggesting there isn't an external world. But the model we make of it is being colored. The proper term is conditioned by all of our preconceptions, all of our likes and dislikes and wants and don't wants, and all of that. So if we can't understand this, actually, we don't really understand anything. And there is a real sense in which, even given all of our incredible technology and the amazing growth of knowledge that's happened in modernity, we are fundamentally ignorant because of this. If you don't know this, you actually really don't know who you are. And that fundamental ignorance leads to terrible consequences because people land up making very bad decisions without knowing why. And honestly, I believe in fundamental human goodness. Actually, I think human beings are fundamentally good. And there is very, very strong evidence for it as well. There's an amazing book, for example, called A Paradise Built in Hell, which is about how natural disasters bring out the best in people, not the worst in people. There was a study of the 1908 San Francisco earthquake where they literally made a utopia. And, you know, so the idea that we're fundamentally bad is actually wrong. And not only wrong, it's systematically been lied about by psychologists. And there's another book called Human Kindness, which actually goes through how these lies have been generated. Do you know, for example, the Lord of the Flies story about the kids who go onto a desert island and create this horrible world is a complete lie. What actually happened was when those kids were marooned on an island, they started a school, they had a clinic, it was democratic, they lived in perfect harmony. That's the actual fact. But they lied about it and said there was this barbaric world they made. It's simply untrue. Our basic human goodness is being confused reactively by this map of the world. Mm-hmm. So our job as human beings is to come back to our natural intelligence, our basic human goodness. We can use the map as an advisor. There's nothing wrong with the map. The map's fine. It's an advisor. But never use it as the first response you make to anything, because it is paranoid and because it comes from the past, which means if you are guided by your recognitions, you will go round and round and round in circles because you're always being guided from the past. Now, look what's happening now. We have rapid technological change. We have rapid social change. We have rapid environmental change. What are the politicians saying? Make America great again. I look into the past. Go to the past, because that's the only place recognition comes from. Whereas what we actually have to be is reactive responsively for the present. Now, this is something totally different. And this nostalgia for the past is what has caused the Ukraine war. It's what is driving European politics. It's driving politicians everywhere. Why? Because we see rapid change, and our responsiveness, our reactiveness can't deal with it because it comes from the past. So again, meditation has a fundamental role in correcting this so we can deal with challenges intelligently and kindly, rather than always pretending that there was some golden age 50 or 100 or 200 years ago where everything was funky-dory, which of course we all know is absolutely nonsensical. But the reason why that happens is because of this recognitive loop, which is totally unconscious. And so meditation is that. Now, having established a meditation practice, and this is what I hope people will do, you take 3 minutes a day, you just do it like that, 1 week after the next time you drink a cup of coffee. By the end of it, a reader should have an experience of meditation. Now, this is something else that's worth saying. If I have a piece of chocolate and I say to you, well, I've got chocolate here, it's sticky, it's sweet, it's brown, it melts in your mouth, you're never going to have any idea what I'm talking about. I have to give you a piece of chocolate. I think, oh, okay, that's chocolate. Meditation's like that. I want to give people a piece of meditation. Once they get it, it's irreversible. They know what meditation is. It's like, okay, I got it. I get it. And if you get the experience of seeing how the map is being projected moment to moment to moment, once you have that experience, everything changes. Now, it's not brainwashing. It's not giving you some new belief system. It's merely showing how we make the world. It's that fundamental. And of course, what you do with it is entirely up to you. It's not as if there's any particular thing to do, but learning it is the key. And it's not difficult. It doesn't require sitting for an hour with your legs crossed. Honestly, that's ridiculous. And that whole thing is an ancient trope from the traditions, the cultural traditions that made it. But actually, the fundamental insight is just to learn how we separate our attention from the map making. Mm-hmm. Once we clarify the difference between our natural intelligence and the map that is capturing it moment to moment to moment, and we start residing in our natural intelligence, we have choices. We suddenly have insight. People start saying, oh, you've become wise. Furthermore, you become kind. Because why? People are naturally kind, but you're not being pulled by, oh, I've got to do that, into acts of unkindness. You're not being triggered into actions you might regret. How often have we been triggered into an argument or into a reaction without being able to control it? The reason is because the map has told us to do that. And we've done it before. We say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, that's so sad. That's because we aren't in control of our reactivity.
So meditation basically puts a pause in the loop program.
You become aware of cognition rather than recognition. Recognition happens in your cognition. You cognize recognition, if you want to put it right. And to do that, you need to have this savoring quality. Then you have the capacity to cognize recognition. And, there are all these, there's a wonderful, like Lord of the Rings, King of Rohan is sleeping, and there's this evil vizier who's running his country for him. Or in Aladdin's cave, the Sultan is sleeping and there's the evil guy. Well, really, that's a sort of folk memory of what's actually happening to us moment to moment. Our natural intelligence, the king of our being, who we really are, is being affected, taken over by this advisor, this recognitive thing full of words that tells you what to do. And we have to retake the throne of our being, re-inhabit who we really are as human beings. This is not like health. People say, oh, meditation makes you healthier. I don't care. That is not the reason to meditate. Oh, meditation makes you better at work. I don't care. That is not the reason to meditate. The reason to meditate is because we as human beings belong on the throne of our being. That's to say, we belong in our natural, compassionate nature with this recognitive device as an advisor. That's what meditation is for. And, you know, modern views of meditation see it as a skill, something to do with health and all that. That's such a pity, because it isn't. It's a fundamental insight into humanity, deeper than anything else you could ever learn. It is that deep. It is literally saying, this is who you are. And then when you know that, then you can work out whether you want to learn French or not. That's a completely separate matter.
Well, yeah,
But this is not just a normal life skill.
Personal awareness. It's an actual, it's the epitome of an awakening, right?
It is, you could say it's an awakening, but all these metaphors, careful, because, it's an awakening. I'm going to awaken somehow. This is a very unhelpful metaphor. Actually, this is where the problem lies, that there are all these spiritual books. I'm not saying spiritual books aren't a great thing and all that, but the truth is that when you read them, you land up aggregating all these concepts, ideas about what you should be doing. Forget them all. Honestly, until you've worked out how your reactivity is coloring your life, you don't. So don't worry about it, because it's not very hard, but once you've done that, then you go, okay, I get what awakening. I understand what I'm awakening to now. Another very misleading word is enlightenment. What are you talking about? Really, again, when you start re-inhabiting your intelligence, then all these terms start making sense. You start having a referent for them within your experience, because that's where they live. They're nothing to do with the, quote, external world, because the external world is a TV screen. I'm not saying there isn't a world out there, but what we're experiencing is a display. So don't go looking for things out there. They're not out there. They're in here. And they're not, and even in here is a TV screen. Actually, that's also can be very misleading. We have to get to grips with reactivity. Then it all becomes clear. Richard,
is there something magical, meaningful, or purposeful in the 3 minutes?
Not really. It could have been 2 minutes is a bit short, and 5 minutes seems a little bit demanding. The honest truth is that 3 minutes is a long time in show business. If you actually sit there with 3 minutes and you try and do something, you realize, boy, that's a long time. This is not a short time. 5 minutes feels like an eternity. Oh my God. 2 minutes, a little bit too little. So I say 3 minutes. This app, I made a free app for the book, by the way. You can download a timer with the meditation exercises on your mobile phone, which is free with the book, which you can get it from my website, free altogether. Don't even buy the book. I have a website called Richard Dixey. That's Dixey, richarddixey.com. And you can go there and download this app. But that app has a 3 minute timer. And when you do something for 3 minutes deliberately, it's a long time. It's not a short time, but it's long enough for it to be absolutely impactful. And there's a wonderful Latin saying, you probably know it. It says, water cuts through stone, not by cutting hard, but by cutting often. Oh, very good. And that quote is exactly what this is about. It's just a drip. Do it every day. Drip and another one. Drip. And quite surprisingly, even 7 times, just doing that, you're kind of getting the hang of it by the time you've done it 7 times. Then you get another one. Do that for 7 times. Drip, drip. By the end of it, you really have got an idea what meditators are doing. And this is with the idea of it. Rather than writing an encyclopedia about meditation,
right,
the end of which you might know absolutely nothing, basically, apart from a bunch of words about meditation, which of course is useful.
It's a practicum.
Yeah. So each of your chapters then helps you start to focus with a different sense, perhaps?
Yeah, well, okay. So I talked briefly about the 6 gates, 5 senses, thoughts, and imaginations, right? 6 gates. So we work with one of the gates each week, and gradually we move towards the daddy of them all, which of course is thoughts and imaginations. You can actually cognize your own thoughts. You can. They can become an object of cognition, just like you can cognize what you see, you can cognize what you hear, you can cognize what you think. Now, this is big, because we often think, well, I am thoughts. No, you're not thoughts. Thoughts happen to you. Where did it come from? How do thoughts work? Blah, 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 all of that. So you start going into an examination, which, most people would think was extraordinarily profound. You mean you can tell me what thoughts are? Like most people have no idea what thoughts are. They just happen. You start becoming understanding. You start generating. You stand under your own cognition and begin to become able to engage in thinking deliberately or in following imagination deliberately, because all of these faculties happen to us. We can explore them just like we can explore what we hear, see, feel, and think. We can just go ahead and make an exploration. And so the very simple meditation techniques, simply to open a door into a completely extraordinary discovery, namely, we are remarkable as beings, and we're kind and we're wise, and we have natural intelligence that sees, just like 4-year-olds will go, Daddy, why are you doing that? It's that capacity to see. And that clarity of mind is our natural state. It's being stirred up, muddied up, roiled up by reactivity the whole time, which is why we're so muddled. Once we learn to calm it down and become less reactive, suddenly we see, oh my gosh, I understand what that is. Now,
Isn't it funny how we can get so irritated by other people's reactivity?
Of course,
because he just flew off the handle, and that's uncomfortable for us.
Yes, because of our own reactivity.
Yeah, but we deal with it every day in ourselves, and we don't find it uncomfortable. Maybe we should, right?
Or for all the parents listening to this show, well, I'm a parent. How often have we done something to our children and thought, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that? Where's that come from? Our own parents. That's why it's in the map. It's already in the map. And so bang, we go and do it to our children. And it's that realization, oh my God, I can get control of this. I don't have to say, I must do better. I have to do better and close ourselves down. Absolutely the reverse. We learn to be responsive to phenomena that are arising because we vikara them. We savor them. We are able to engage with them without immediately becoming reactive. And this capacity, we can see it. You can see it in a great actor. You can see it in a great musician, a great sports person. There are many places in modernity we worship these people. Why are they so? What's so good about them? What's good about them is, for their specific skill, they're able to totally be responsive to phenomena that are arising. Now, of course, they only learn music or baseball or whatever, so it's quite narrow. We could be like that with the entirety of our experience. We'd literally be the Babe Ruth of our 6 gates. And that, to me, is a phenomenal discovery. Really extraordinary.
I think the term for that comes to my mind is getting in the groove.
You could say getting in the groove, but it's not groovy. Unfortunately, the hippies, again, they were right. I mean, look, I was one. And we were all being groovy. But then groovy became an end in itself. No. Groovy is not an end in itself. Groovy is how you react to events. And this is where the problem happened, that hippies became a thing. And then suddenly, well, how do I, what do I do now? I'm so groovy. Well, go make money. And that's exactly what happened to the hippies. They got seduced by their own grooviness.
Right.
And really you're quite right, though. Really, it's correct. The insight's correct. The proper term is lila. It's a dance. And, you could say, I'm learning to dance with my experience. It's a dance. It's responsive. Things happen, I react to them responsively. I don't just bounce. I'm learning this skill. And you can see it in sportsmen. As I say, you can see it in fighters, like martial artists. Again, the same thing. They're not immediately freaking out. They read the situation and respond appropriately. That's our natural intelligence. And
I think Wayne Dyer called it the space between the notes.
You could say it's space between the notes. Actually, it's all these metaphors are helpful up to a point.
Right.
A lot of people think that meditation is about being quiet, having no thought, having nothing happening. And, they have this weird idea that somehow you're meant to go into total silence. This is a complete misunderstanding of meditation. Meditation is eyes open, ears open, seeing, feeling, engaging openly without the shaking reactivity we all suffer from. That's what it's for. And, once you get it, it's like, oh, it's just a basic thing.
So in your mind then, Richard, meditation is not to become more in connection with a source.
No.
It is to become more in connection with our own selves isn't even the right word, but our own, like you say, reactivity, or our own tendencies to behave in certain ways or to react or think in certain ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, the only reason I say no to connecting to a source is that if we have an idea like that, like, I'm trying to find the source, that very word is problematic, because that's a recognitive word that's going to be made up from all kinds of things you've read and experiences you've had. And of course, as a result, it misleads you. Even if you did connect to the source, I mean, maybe that happened and you actually made that connection, but then you remember it and try and do it again. Which is why so often you find people who have a rich prayer life, they have extraordinary experiences in their prayer, and then they lose it. And the reason they lose it is because they try to remember the good experience they had last time. Then it's in the map, then it's not real. So it's not that I'm saying anything about, I'm not really making any statement about why you meditate, apart from learning where we are.
Yeah.
If you really get to where you are, then the experiences you have will be beyond words. Not because they're so mystical that you can't put them into words, but because you will realize that the words will mislead you, because the words will remember the previous example, but you don't want the previous example. You want this one. So more properly, I think you could say, meditation is to discover an authentic way of being. Authenticity. A path with a heart is, Castaneda. A path with a heart is to be authentic. Now, that authenticity has its own authenticity, and within it, there are going to be features about it. But you can't make that a goal. The moment you make authenticity a goal, you are a fake. That isn't authentic. Authentic has no goal. Authentic is authentic. It doesn't need a goal. It's already authentic. Yeah. And so that's the thing. It's realizing that's very valuable, actually. And if you can find that source of authenticity in every moment, you will be authentic in every moment, which is the only place you can be authentic.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, my friends, we only have about 4 minutes left. And I have to tell you, Richard, I am totally blown away with your presentation today, or just our interview, because I have a totally new outlook on meditation. I mean, I have to process it. and yet I shouldn't process it. I should just be with it, right?
The key is the view. To me, what's been missing in meditation practice in the West, it's come into the West, it's here, is the view. Why meditate? I think it's so, once you explain to people how reactivity works, once you explain the 6 gates, once you explain how the map making works, it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's been missing. People meditate for health, for whatever it is. Complete mistake. Just meditate because you're a human being. There's no other motivation. It's simply that. It's just part of being human. And to me, once your view is clear, and this view is unassailable, by the way. Honestly, you can wheel in any number of physicists, or biologists or neurologists. No one's going to disagree with this. We only get 5 senses, thoughts, and imaginations. I mean, that is unarguable. You can't pretend there's some other vehicle by which you get knowledge. So once you get that, it makes sense. It's just completely okay. There's nothing complicated about it. The consequences are vast. They're beyond imagination.
Truly.
What's available if you start doing this. So, I feel quite passionate about it, and as you can tell, and I feel that really, if you just give yourself permission to do 3 minutes a day, the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee, by the end of 14 weeks, you'll have a pretty good idea what meditation is, and your life will have changed. Not because you've done anything to your life, you have seen your life. That's why it will change. You haven't done anything. You just looked and said, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, oh, okay. It's that kind of look that you get that, okay, I understand where I am now. Wow. That to me is the great gift of meditation.
There's the challenge, Jackie. So I'm in. I got to go buy a candle because I don't think I own a candle.
So 3 minutes a day.
Yes.
My name's Richard Dixey. Get it on Amazon, get it on Barnes & Noble, wherever. That's the book. It's a really easy book.
And your website is richarddixey.com. Easy That's enough to say, easy enough to spell.
Except I'm an EY, not an IE.
Yeah.
There you go.
EY. Thank you so much for showing up as you today, Richard. I am just blown away. I hope you come back because I have a whole slew of questions that are just circulating through my mind, but I think I'll meditate and maybe I'll answer them myself or come to that understanding myself.
Okay.
Any takeaways, Jackie? Are you as blown away as I am?
It's just a very interesting thing, and it's going to take me a little bit to digest it because, there was another word that we didn't get to today, which was manifesting, and so that's probably another conversation to have. But
we're going to have to come back. I hope you come back, Richard.
I'd love to anytime.
Okay. That's about all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. My biggest hope is that you would tell a friend about the show. And I hope that you are like me and go out and buy a candle today because you're going to get started with this amazing insight. I don't even know how to describe it. Lastly, please, please, please make it a great day because it's all about choice. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Mastery Radio. Join Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery through stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Visit their website, www.lifemasteryradio.com. Join their mailing list and be notified about upcoming guests. That's lifemasteryradio.com.